so where do I want to start with the cleaning up after everything I did? Well, let's start with dead code. Bucket Arena is in play, so that should exist, actually. That was a bug that was still latent from the changes. And, let's see. All of that is out. All of that is out. Did anything else get touched there? Yeah, I'll come back for that. I want to track down if zeros right now and see if any other ones are from old code. This is not from old code. This is from future code. This is old code. It's cool. This is all from the old project, so I'm not going to touch those occurrences. We want to stay in the new project. Let's see. If zeros are good, what about some to-dos? That one, no. I could do a renaming pass over here and make this the proto layer. I guess modules don't quite fit into that space there. I could do that. That feels like a little bit bigger. There are some other more immediate concerns floating around, I think. These are all fine. Um, um, yeah, actually everything here looks maybe like that's in good shape. I think the next big one then, if we look at RPG Sim New, the next big cleanup underneath context, I think. Double check operators doesn't have anything major. No, nothing really changed at this level. This level is distinct. This is the simulation level, so this is where entities and stuff move around. But I guess we did make a little change here. Right, this issue is starting to come up of, do I want to pass around IDs or do I want to pass around proto pointers? And the nice thing about a pointer is that it's like a register size thing. So in terms of passing, it takes up the same amount of space as an integer. In a struct, it's bigger. So like when you're making arrays of things, if you're using pointers, you're going for 64 bits. If you're going with pointers, right? And having making it an ID system means that you can imagine pushing it down to 32 or even 16 bits, which just means you have less memory. And does that matter? Well, it's hard to say. It's hard to say if the memory bandwidth on those is going to really be the biggest concern at this stage. So I tend to think if you get a nice clean system where you're passing pointers through all the time and then you want to transition, after you really develop it that way for a while, if you want to transition to IDs, it's a little bit more clunky, but it isn't that bad. Like you can usually add it in later, whereas carrying it ambiguously through both ways all the time is really frustrating. So I think if I could converge to making everything just pass a proto instead of a proto ID, and say that the only time we deal with proto IDs is in that moment when we're passing from a static reference, right? In the game scripts here, tile ID, like right here's a static reference to the protected tile prototype, right? The protected type tile or whatever. So right there, an ID becomes necessary. But what we could do is we could just say RPG tile, right? Like we could just say you go straight for the proto and you pass the proto here. That wouldn't be that much farther off from what we've got. That might take a context getting passed, right? That would be the difference. So this is basically RPG proto from ID context, RPG proto kind tile, and then the ID is RPG tile ID n, right? See what I'm saying? And then you can imagine this API can just become RPG proto pointer. The difference between the two, though, is a function call. So if I was actually going to go that way, I would throw in a whole new wrench of complexity, right, just to do the transition here. After all that work I did to make it all IDs, it is a little unfortunate to immediately throw in that function call. So I could make this as fast as possible, though. I still think maybe I want to go for proto pointers just as an experiment. And see how that feels. I don't need to commit to doing this right away either. It's a little bit big for where I'm at. I should probably keep looking for other opportunities to clean up smaller things first. But that seems like an important space to do a pass over at some point soon. And then yeah, there's a couple spots where we use that. And then the combat module. Wasn't there something here? Maybe it's not here. Parser. Right. Parser actually comes right before context even. Yeah, we need to figure out where this actually belongs. So the reason we put it here, I think it's in context.c that heart and attack get referenced, because that's where we're building proto from literal. So a literal by itself doesn't actually need to know about that. What's more true is the conversion from a literal to a proto does need to know about heart and attack tiles. But that's a really weird place to put the definitions, right? So what I need to do now is I need to figure out how I want to actually phrase definitions and declarations and how to organize all of them. It should be pretty easy, I think. I think it should be possible to make a forward declaration type and a definition type, where you only ever get to have one definition type, but you can have as many forward declarations as you want, including in object files other than the current one, and they would all be the same. And then one spot defines it, and they all link together properly, right? That should be doable. And then things like this, where I need to declare these, this would become a declaration, not a definition, because it's just this thing saying, hey, the core game scripting system has the heart and attack tiles hardwired in a special way, and so we can flexibly declare those IDs up here and start having this tile ID resolution thing invading the engine code just a little bit for those special cases, without really interfering with how everything else can be structured. Okay, so I want to go and design those different declaration macro styles now. So I think the way this could be understood is we could say this is a forward declaration, and then if we could adhere to a rule here and always put the definition right with the script, I think that would be pretty good, because then we could stay close to a point where these can get coupled together completely. I think that would be the final resting place of this. Once I know how to pull off the trick, I would want it to be organized that way, I think. So it would be like, here's a forward declaration so this can see the protected. Here's a definition of protected later. Here's the forward declaration for a heart attack so that these can see that. Go. Great, so that compiled. It ran. That looks like it worked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reimagine this part a little bit now. Yeah, let's see here. These ones will be considered sort of internal. Here's the section definer. Here's the symbol definer. Then you'll have a define RPG tile decal, and you give it a name. And then what you do to declare it is this stuff. You go RPG tile section, RPG tile symbol on the end. And then when you want to do RPG tile definition, it's all that again with an equals 0 And so then this is an example of tile decal heart, tile decal attack. And this is tile decal protected. Now these all become folded into the scripting over here. So I'm pretty convinced now that the ID system is just going to be another aspect of the scripting system. I think they go together. Tile script, symbol, heart, hook signature, tile script, register, Right, so all this needs is an extra line right here that goes RPG tile def, right? And then the symbol goes there. And so that is going to replace this line, this line, this line, and this line. So now you declare a tile, and then later you write the script for it this way, right? Declare it, just makes it exist. This makes it callable, and they can link together through these. Or something like that. Maybe this is going to turn into some kind of proto-pointer thing. Ah, I spoke too soon. It doesn't ready to work yet. Yes, this. And there we go. Okay, so I'm gonna take ID and just fold it right in here to the RPG tile scripting. Perfect. That's the effect I wanted. Great. Okay, so throwing this all together, I think the next step is to come up with a good factorization for this scheme. I need to figure out what the public and open points are. This is separate. So this is tile brain scripts. Underdeveloped. Tile script over here is a little overdeveloped, and we want to simplify it. section. So that makes our decal and our def. Yeah. We don't need all that. What we want is just decal equals 0, maybe. Although, I will say, in this case, I don't necessarily want definition to be used directly. I think for the purposes of some use cases, it would be nice to have that just sort of set up and ready to go. I don't like that more. I like that less. Although yeah, so here it's reaching back into the system in a nasty way. So, not really sure yet. There's something fairly complicated feeling about a lot of this. I guess some simplifications that are possible are decal and def are the only two that need to do that. Too annoying. That makes the symbol. goes like this. I don't know about that. Yeah, I guess there's no simplification that I like. I mean, like, if you're gonna do it out by hand, I don't see why you wouldn't just do RPG tile like this. No, get rid of that. Use that for the raw ID there. So that carries the raw ID because it's more compile time. It's more static stuff, so you can't invoke IDs yet. Feels dangerous to have them both, but what can you do? Okay, I think that's as good as it's gonna get. But that's not bad. So now the question is, do I want to use the same concept multiple times to make things like these events and these encounter contexts or modules or whatever I want to call them? Okay, let me think. The cleanup did have another issue, which was that proto issue. Maybe I should go work on that one now. This here. I think that's probably the right next step. So the idea here was that instead of getting IDs when we do this, that we could resolve all the way to the proto pointer and just pass proto pointers around all the time. So yeah, I mean, this makes sense in some of these contexts already. Like this would be like exactly what you want here. Exactly what you want here. Although this is probably going to need to take the context in order for it to work. I could make a little leap and say that these won't these will have to take the context that is called context locally. There's a way in which that could suck someday, but for now I think I'll run with it. Now that's gonna mean this needs to be a proto now. Which is fine with me. And apparently it's fine with this code path here too. Okay, we're going to go a little bit risky here. This is going to be context, protos, RPG, proto-kind tile. Plus this, except we can push it a step further. If I just had I can bake that into that. So we'll be doing, actually I'll go even better. Top proto, no. We'll just do, well no, this is fine. The compiler can handle this. Okay, so boom, that plus raw ID n. And then size of RPG proto. I mean, this is getting gnarly, but the idea here wait, this doesn't work super well. Let me think. What was I thinking? I was thinking if I just did this and then I grabbed RPG tile ID, that would technically be the correct thing. The thought was just, what if I didn't have to do the additional you know, the additional step of subtracting there. And I thought I could pull it off. And I'm not sure why I thought that. This ID is going to get multiplied under the hood by the size of a proto after the subtraction has been applied. And I would still end up needing to do the same thing in order to get the offset correct. Like, if you multiply this first, you get a problem, which is that they're gonna. I mean, technically, no. It's really. I think that's just a. It just seems overcomplicated. If there's a way to make that work, it's too complicated for me. It's possible, but I have some doubts. So I think this is the best way to do it. Now the risk here is that this is unchecked, right? There's no check here that this ID is in range. But I think this should be safe because all of this is now being handled through compiler errors that should make it impossible to reference an ID that isn't already resolving to an ID, right? Like this should have the same amount of force as saying we can assume we can access a global variable. So my usual tendency to want to check everything can maybe be relaxed. Like this is pretty strongly statically guaranteed. It just doesn't feel that way inside because I've never built something like this before. But like what I've just built should be a static guarantee. Right, so now the reason things are breaking is because the API was originally written to take IDs, and now we're gonna shift it to taking protos. Let's just reference it directly. That seems better. Oh, this is getting cool. Whoops, not use. Those all used to be strings. It's so cool now. Oh man, that's so cool. Okay. Okay, cool. So that's getting there. That's getting there. My build script. I have this like shell script system that I built called BLD. I actually have a YouTube playlist about it. Um, the um, the basic idea is I can create a shell script and run like initialize the system, and then I can write BLD unit. That's the most basic command. Give it a C file and an output name, and there it goes. But then I can do all kinds of fancy stuff with it to link together more complex things, pass options. All of my like compiler options and stuff then get filtered through a system that looks like this. Basically, these are filters that say when this option is set up, and when this option is set up, then spit out this extra option or whatever. So we can see when we're using the Clang compiler, if sanitizer is turned on, this flag goes out, right? So there's these flags files, and then you just get to do things like when you write a build script, you can pass like this is the DLL option. So then when you look at the linker flags, you'll see the DLL option is used to add DLL flags and stuff. So that just figures out how you want to map from the main toggles you want to create for yourself down to the many toggles. Like the compiler and the linker all are like command line pianos. They got tons and tons of keys for you to press, and you got to press all of them together and make these complex chords. And you just wanted like a button, right? Like hit like press this button to build. And so you have a couple of options on how to modify that button, but mostly it's simple and maps through these things. Then the last thing is I have this local variables system. So this here runs, well, this isn't the real one. This is the one that initializes. That other one's for copying when you're setting up a code base. It auto-populates the real local vars. This local vars contains some of the main options. So like here's where I control which compiler I'm using, which debugger or which compilation mode I'm using, not which debugger I'm using, assembler, what architecture I'm targeting, what linker I'm using, and then I can also throw in things here like I can go diagnostics, and now my build system will output all of this is build system diagnostics that come out. I can turn on I forget what the other one is called profile. Right, so I can turn on like a manual markup profiler by just doing this, and boom, I'm building with profile. I actually haven't set up profiling for this project, so it doesn't work, but that's how it works. That's the build system, and also like the workflow system that goes with it. The build system and workflow system are kind of integrated to each other. Anyway. What's next? So there was one thing about this. No, this looks super solid. Okay, so I think let's look again at the scripting, make sure that everything here is about where you'd like it. Yeah, so this one it has a complex relationship. It's a part of the context, but it's such a It's such a nasty part of it. This is basically the context. Well, a hook type. Why? Okay, so the hook signature gets set up there. If we thought of that as part of this and swapped the order on these, then these aren't really separate, right? What's happening here is that this file, in addition to setting up some context types and the functions for it, it also just wants to throw in like a final word rpg.contextscripting.h, something like that. You know what I mean? Like this is really just an extension of the context. Maybe I could go all the way to say RPG scripting, boom, right? I don't know if I would like it to be organized this way. I still have to, you know, take good care to make sure there's hygiene for dealing with the functions that go with this file. But I think that's good. That collapses us down by a file and puts this context-related stuff back into the context file. Binds hook signature together with everything else nicely. I'm going to take a 5-minute break here just to use the bathroom and stuff. And I'll be right back. Let's see. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so I could tackle this part. Yes, these uses of ID all make sense. Are there any users for Proto from ID now? Yeah, it looks like it still happens for this thing called Sim Party. Let's just double check we caught all of the cases of IDs. I think that might be the last one we missed. And that just has the annoying effect of meaning I have to get the Proto. Like I have to do something like this. But it's more consistent that way. The vision here would be that each of these could be set up with their own ID system that is handled statically, right? None of these need to be here at the beginning of main. These could all become declarative and automated. I guess that's the next thing to do, really, is to push this automation process to the next level, because there's some code here that hasn't been pulled out yet, and pushing the automation on this is a little more relevant than sorting out that proto layer. That's just a naming thing that's been sitting in my code base for a little while that I want to get around to, but like that's not quite the same thing as chasing down this ID magic. So I think I want to chase down more of the magic ID system tonight. That way I don't have to do this anymore. I can just do an RPG party macro. Cool. Okay. Let's start by expanding the complexity. So it's already complicated. Let's get greedy and just blow all of this into automation. Starting with the characters. So, game scripts are now going to contain character definitions like this. Right, so I can create these thingies like this. In theory. It's all in context now, isn't it? So there's our RPG tile scripts. Let's try some character scripts. Okay, it can't be tile anymore. It's got to be CHR. And all of these things that say RPG tile need to get renamed into RPG character. We don't need one like this exactly, but we don't need one like this either. It's like this. We need RPG character. It's a little tricky. What do I want to call that? I mean, do I want to call it a character script? It's not actually a function this time. It's not executable, at least. But maybe I do call these the scripts. These are the literals. So I could call it a character literal if I want to avoid the... I want to preserve the word script for things with curly braces, and things without the curly braces are literals. That's the idea. Okay. So a character literal comes with a symbol, a display name, and a script. So that does define a symbol. It doesn't need to create a function. It's just going to go straight into registering the character. Let's see. It needs a symbol, so display, yes, character, raw ID. Maybe we just pass the script as the void pointer, and we know that those are C strings, and then we process them that way. I mean, that sucks, but it's easy, and I don't care about this part right now. Ultimately, the registry is going to need to loosen up a little bit somehow. But I don't know how yet. Define the symbol. So we still get a symbol ID. And then this is just the character accessor. I think that does it. It's not quite rote and repeatable yet, right? Like it kind of is the same for the first chunk, but all this here, like I had to work out a little differently. Like this, I guess, is the same. So really, the only part that's changing is the registry part, right? This definition part works, but it's because I'm coupling the definition in with these registry parts that are a little confusing that this actually isn't totally smooth transition, because each type of definition is going to actually be kind of different as things go. So so I guess I've got the definitions going. The only, yeah, the registry needs the new reg data kind. And then the sim new needs to do something. So this is now processing reg data character. It's gonna look kind of like this one. All of that is the same. Right, this to this is all the same. Just given the reg database and the count, that's just a procedure. And then this is a linking problem. RPG character bias equals the ID bias. So that's one of the outputs is ID bias. I think these are the outputs right here. Probably ID count and ID bias are the outputs. Then you allocate your array. You scan the reg data again. And in this case, every time you get a valid ID, what you want to do with it is declare it to the proto-initialization system. So you take the ID, you get your name from the reg data, name, and then you pull this out of a C string. I think mine is typed like this actually. Reg data putter. So this was just the way of doing it right in the beginning of main. That just became a loop over. So this turned into a loop over this. with IDs coming from the ID mapping system right here in a kind of funny but repeated way, right? This is all repeated again. This is a little different. So there's like, it's checkered now. We got some code that's duped and some code that's not duped. And so we need to figure out how to rotate our perspective until everything has a nice home to stay at and doesn't need to get written over and over again. But yeah, I feel pretty confident that should just do the thing. Yeah, cool. Cool. Okay, so I could keep it going right up to the completion right now. The funny thing is that characters, let me just skip that one so we get to one where they're not talking. It's distracting to me. Characters, parties, and routes are all going to kind of work the same, right? They all just have a script string here. The only thing is I haven't been assigning names to either of these. So it would actually be a transition to using the symbol system on them, but not giving them a name. So that's fine. But if I wanted to, I could make them all match each other, and then it wouldn't just be a deduplication of the stuff that was deduplicated here, but it could literally all collapse down to one code path, right? It wouldn't just need to be a procedural deduplication. I mean, it could get to the point where these might all just run through the same code path. Because I could just say that protos are all going to go the same way, or like protos with literals. The tiles might just be different, right? Like tile protos might need to be a different type than the other protos. And that's not the only clue here. The other thing is like the tile has all this and everything else has all this. The only time where it's confusing is that I want to be able to create protos with proto subs, right? Which could be tiles, right? I want to be able to put tiles on the other things. So when they're creating these lists of their like the sub protos that the proto depends on, tiles don't have sub protos. At least I haven't been giving them sub protos. I could imagine a way where we could do that. Maybe there's maybe a different way that I would want to approach that. But the other thing we could do is oh. Huh. Okay, I think I have an idea. Um, okay, I got a couple of big picture steps to do. Just to sketch out the main thrust here. I want to get to a point where all the special tile stuff lives in a separate struct. I still want to have protos for tiles because I do think I'm going to want to play with tiles having subs as well. So tiles could depend on other tiles as part of their definition in such a way that we could end up with a sort of parameterization of tiles. Like you could imagine having the idea of a tile, which is just the effect of a different tile, but placed inside of a different context or interpreted in a different way or something. And that could be a useful tool to work with. It might also be crazy and not useful, but I want to keep the spot open, and I want to be able to create these lists anyway. So I want this to go live somewhere else as one of the end steps, so that all things, including tiles, would just have the same prototype thing, but then for each tile, you would also be able to get to its like tile-specific stuff in a separate array. And that could just boil down to something like proto-tile and have a tile pointer here. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what that would look like. It could also just be that they're parallels, so you use the ID system to get both. I'm not sure which one I would prefer. But I want to push in that direction in steps. I think first things first, I want to get... So the other steps I want to finish are I want to get all of these going first, and I do want to try to collapse this all into one big proto-processing code path. So I think the right place to start will be, let's give these names. Just make them match the thing that already just went through the same transition. I'm just going to go ahead and say let's put names on them. Okay. So all that did was prep the way. Now when I go back to the scripting thing, it's in the context header now. So a little bit of it has to be repeated because there's no way to automate the setup of these section declarators. And so as much as like that has to be uniquely named for each space. Hey, welcome. I'll show you. So the simulator, let me run the old version that I used to have working. I mean, it still works, but the one I'm replacing. And I'll show you what it looks like. But it's an RPG game, like player characters and combat encounters and you know, having different moves and whatever. And it simulates a game, but you don't play it. It just runs bots through the game and gives me stats back about how different parties fare against different situations and stuff like that. And I want to push it farther so that I can build more complex stuff with it, and also so that I can make it run faster so I can gather more data about it more quickly. So I'm kind of simultaneously doing the rewrite to speed things up and to make it more flexible. I think the first pass was just so rough. I just sort of stumbled into the idea for like 6 weeks, and now I'm trying to really upgrade the basis of it. Oh, yeah, that's still running. Okay, so that much is the same. That much is the same. That much is the same. Yeah, so all of this might just be needing to be duplicated, which is a shame because it's a lot. But it sets up the macros. I didn't think of a better way to do it. I'm just gonna have to brute force duplicate it for now. I can't think of any better way to do it yet. Mr. Paul asks, what's the difference between a temp and a scratch arena? So a scratch arena is a temp in the way I do it. Let me pull up some code here that might contain the scratch. Okay, so you can see my scratch is a temp, and what's special about scratch is that when you get scratch arenas, one, you are promising you will release it before the end of the function. That's one of the rules. If you take a scratch, you cannot do anything with it that would expect to hold the memory past the end of the call frame, right? Or really past the end of whatever block you opened it in. And two, you're guaranteed that nothing else is going to free memory off of this arena while you're using it. Now, there's a way to arrange that so that if you have a call stack with lots of scratches being used, you really only end up needing 2 arenas to cover everybody. And the reason that you can do it is because of the way nested calls work. There are some restrictions. It's an interesting topic, but that's what scratch is it's a guaranteed to have no conflict with other arenas, and you promise to close it within a certain scope. The arena temp in general, like this one, at the lower level is just a restore point. So when I can put any arena into a temp, and then I can optionally restore that or not. But you could think of this as just I could have named this arena position or something, or arena restore point, right? Whatever. And then the idea is when you want to, you instead of begin temp, you take arena restore point, and then you can imagine end temp is restore, right? This is the restore is to the point where you were at. So in arena, any memory you put onto it, when you restore, you would clear off all the memory you put onto it. And that's all the temp thing does, is it saves that restore point for you and lets you restore back to it. So I only use that when I'm doing something like, hey, in this function, for instance, I'm allocating some stuff, but it's possible that after some allocations get made, some failures might get detected. And so some errors might get detected. And so when that happens, I might fail to actually construct the thing I'm trying to construct, and I'll just send the memory back. Like, I took some memory to get started, but now it turns out I don't need any of it. Make it all go away. You want to be careful with how far you push that, because sometimes freeing memory isn't enough. If you have a linked list and you put some stuff into it and then you free it, well, that didn't clean up the mess you made, right? So it's not a magic wand. But in terms of memory management, it cleans itself up. Now, does that make sense? How the scratch and temp are related to each other? The temp is the concept of being able to restore, which you can apply to any arena, and the scratch is a specific arena that you only ever access through a temporary, like a enforced temporary zone. And yeah, you could think of the scratch arena as coming from a pool, so that whenever you need a scratch arena, getting one is not very expensive. It's not like a new arena gets allocated. It's just you access one of the scratch arenas that are available to you, and the system guarantees that your scratch arena won't be freed from under your feet by some other piece of code. Well, I'm glad. I'm happy that you're checking it out. I'm pushing. What I tend to do is take C and build in new features. Like I try to push it to do new stuff so that I can organize code in new and interesting ways. Sometimes that's less literal, but this time it's very literally what I'm doing is I'm hacking away at the stuff. It's like just below the surface of what's legal to do in the language. That's not true. Well below the surface of what's legal to do in the language. Like I'm deep into um, uh, less defined territory here. We're not worried about um, undefined behavior very much and stuff like that. We're just making the machine do tricks. So keep that in mind. But I don't think it's a waste of time. A lot of these techniques end up being super useful. Um, right now, yes. So I set up this ID system, and this will only work on the this will only work on the Microsoft compiler. I need to come up with a plan for how I'm going to manage having multiple of these. Basically, you could think of all of this code here, this whole section, or at least this much of it, right? At least this much of it is basically my very complicated way of adding a feature to the language that's something like this. Open enum RPG tile ID, enum RPG tile ID value, heart, tac, protect, protected, right? So you can imagine a world where we had a language where when you make an enum, you don't have to define it right there. You can, in some other file, contribute values to that enum by just declaring them like this, and then having the compiler put them together into an order so that you have like a small consecutive ID pool linked to by these various names. Now, this kind of enum wouldn't be very good for like file formats and stuff. You wouldn't want to use it that way because it doesn't stay the same between versions. So we'd have to talk about how we would want to solve that problem in a different way. But it solves some other cool problems that I am constantly chafing against, so I thought I'd play with it. But you can't just add that very easily directly to C and get it all working without any complications. I didn't want to have to do a meta program, so I'm trying to come up with a way to write, like declare open enum RPG tile ID, and that's basically what these lines of code do. Right? They do the equivalent thing. They're just a much more they're put together out of the preprocessor. And so the feature works, but it's a lot of boilerplate to make one of these things. And I tried to think of a way to simplify it, and I really didn't come up with anything. I mean, we could drop the definition macro completely and just say in order to create one, you know that you write equals 0. You need a separate bias variable for each one. Each one definitely needs a different section name. Okay. Maybe there's a way. Okay. Oof. Is that real? how would that get interpreted? Oh my gosh. Okay. Okay, let's do this in a couple of steps. First, I'm gonna blow it up and make it big and verbose, and then there might actually be a way to pull it together here. Okay, so this is going to get replaced with, oops, that was too many steps. Just like this, we're going to process characters, but now it's parties. I think that's the whole thing. Oh, there's this one. This is party. I think these should just be 2 plus, whoops. Two plus that. 2 plus that. Okay, tile. Tile count, just make it 2 plus that. Party. Proto party in it. Okay. RPG party literal. Farmer party. Farmer party. Oh, but we don't do that. Party, and then this needs to be a separate ID space. CHR party. Okay. Party literal. Okay, so right, this is a route definition. This is a party definition. Party definition. Party decal. Party definition. Okay, so why aren't you convinced? Farmer party. Party bias. I don't know how you expect that to work. RPG route bias. There we go. Character bias looks good. Okay, so what's the deal though? ID RPG party. this one's spelled differently. All right, I need to take a quick break. Be as quick as I can here. I should build a 4-coder command that's just like spawn a 4-coder instance with the massive text and the 5-minute break intro. Put the cursor right here. Okay. Now in order to get the proto from ID, what you would have to do is you'd have to go RPG party, wizard party, goblin party, and crash. Okay. That's fine. We'll figure out why. Well, that might have something to do with it. Yeah, it's still doing this. Why are you doing that? Route init. Party init. Drag database party. That should be it. But it's not. Wow. Hey, wait, is it just this? No. What are you doing here? Okay, so that's clearly wrong. This should be the symbol route. Oh, here we go. Route. Full transparency here. I was needing to go to the bathroom so bad I could hardly think when I was trying to figure out how to finish this for a second ago. There we go. Alright, okay. So, now what's crashing? Party 1 is null. Okay, interesting. Let's take a look. Party proto. That looks like the wrong kind of proto. Okay, so party proto. Yeah, look at that. You're not doing it either. Okay. There we go. Okay, there we go. Everything's working through this extremely verbose, non-repetitive, non-repeatable thing that I have to produce a copy of for each one. I want to see how much of that I can fold down into a single tight solution so that I can stamp out most of this without so much trouble. I have an idea for how it could be done. It's gonna get a little gnarly. So I think what we're gonna have to do is imagine that these things could be a parameter. So this is gonna become like RPG ID decal. And then it's gonna take some kind of parameter, which I'm gonna call Q. It's gonna be magic. I don't know what's gonna happen. But somehow it's going to take a parameter, and that's like identifying which one of these. But we have to know a couple of pieces of information about that in order to complete it. So the decal looks like this. Section name. Ah, that gets weird, doesn't it? How do you, can you parenthesize pasting? What if it's just Q? It doesn't need to, I don't need to parenthesize pasting. I'll just use Q to distinguish the ID types, right? It'll be like ID underscore Q underscore blah, 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 blah. Or it can be like ID Q or whatever. I don't care. So now this still needs an n parameter here, right? So the tile became a parameter, but n was already a parameter, so that needs to stay in. Same thing here. N is coming in here. We're going to want to use this name here. And you put an ampersand on that one. Yeah, that's how that one works. So the one that just gets the ID, we're still assuming these are all 32-bit ID systems. It's doing a U64 version of RPG tile decal not tile decal ID decal Q N. Oh wait, no, it should be ID raw QN, right? We do that, we get the raw ID. Yeah, that becomes that. And then this needs to become RPG ID bias of Q. So how are we going to get the ID bias of Q? That's just going to be our what should we call it? ID bias Q. We'll do underscores. Okay, ID bias Q. That's just the name of that. We'll do the same thing we used to do. Q N. All right, we'll throw that in there. Q N. This will be RPG ID symbol Q N. Address of RPG ID sim QN. Okay, the rest of this is a little bit more tied into other stuff, so I'm going to do that separately. This is how you spawn up these ID systems now. I mean, this is almost ready to go to the base layer at this point. I mean, this is pretty cool. But let's just check it works. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure. I'm out on one limb here, using something I don't think I've ever used before. At least not seriously, not outside of practicing with it once upon a time. So we're gonna see what happens in a minute, but yeah, so now the way you would do this is you go whenever you want to make a new ID system. If you're in the Microsoft compiler, you have to set up the section first, and then so this could be like if compiler CL, right? You just, if you're in the CL compiler, you got to do this extra step, whatever. And then we're going to do RPG oh, yeah, you want to see the results from the simulation. I think I tried to run that earlier. Maybe I didn't get to show you this yet. Let me run the old version of the simulation, and I'll show you what it looks like for now. And then we can talk about how graphical improvements can be made later. So the old version of the simulation is running in the background now. We'll check on it in a little bit. If I forget again, let me know. I think I said I was going to do that and forgot. Then you just have to define one that's like, okay, this is going to be the tile ID space, and we need to give it a section name. That'll be .rpg tile, and and we want to get to the point where this is to do Mr. Forth sec name attribute, please. Can we get that? Right, and then what you need is another one that's like define RPG ID enum, right? And this one takes in the queue and spits out the global variable, which is the only thing we need to emit into the global namespace to get this thing started. So then you go tile, and that's it. You've declared everything. Because then what happens is we eliminate all this, and what's left is this can go ID tile n. This can go, oh, we didn't make a def, but we could actually do that now. That's pretty simple. Def is going to be RPG ID decal qn equals 0. So we just def tile as a parameter. Right, you see the idea? We just make it a parameter, if we can make that and that into a parameter and pull it in, like literally just pull it from the name and put it in the parameter, then I think problem solved, right? These don't need to be stamped out over and over again at that point. Def tile symbol RPG hook. Okay, the tile script is defining a tile with that symbol, or yeah, it's defining it's using that symbol to define IDs. That should be ID def, right? Yeah, RPG ID def for the symbol. That stays the same. RPG ID raw tile symbol. Right. How does that fare? Does that get the job done? Okay, why not? How are our... How are we off here? Context.h. Did I not update this? ID. No, that's the right way to do it. That should have worked. Okay, so it's saying that ID tile heart is an undeclared identifier. And that's being used right here. Right here we did tile. Oh, we did tile decal. That doesn't exist. Why didn't it tell me that this? Come on. Okay. Come on. That's gotta be a mistake. Hold on. That's like. That's just getting ignored. That's so weird. Okay. Sometimes the errors from C are very odd. So this is an ID decal for the tile. And this is an ID decal for the tile. And then this is RPG ID bias for the tile. I don't like it when it looks like that, so we'll fix it. We'll fix it. But that is the main idea. So before we go and fix aesthetic stuff, let's turn up the automation. You know, we've applied it once, now let's sweep through and do it to all of them. So this is how we do the boilerplate now. That creates the enum. Wait, let me do one thing. We'll do this later. Screw it. No more aesthetics. Let's get the automation done and then do a naming pass. What was I gonna? Oh, yeah, keep applying this. I think that's everything to do with it. RPG character ID just started working, so it kind of threw me for a loop because I was like, I guess expecting more to break. You have to keep these within a certain limit, which is why it has to be manually named separately. Plus, you have to, like, you can't stick ifs into macros. Party. ID definition party. ID raw party. And once more, party with route. Party with route. ID route. ID definition route symbol. ID raw route symbol. RPG ID bias party. ID bias route. Okay, so there's the boilerplate. This other part looks like boilerplate, but it's actually boilerplate for a different system. This is how you make an ID generator. This is just accessing something that is indexed by that ID as a convenience operation all in one go. That's more for the aesthetics of being able to access these things and have a proto with it right away. It does raise the interesting question, what if the protos were just pre-declared? They could all be set to nil, like null, and then populated. And then the symbol wouldn't have to rely on the existence of a local context variable. It wouldn't have to do the arithmetic to grab the pointer off of this and access I guess this isn't a real pointer access. This is just this is all one thing. This is because that's a constant. So it boils out to one big arithmetic off of the pointer, and then you access there to get another pointer, which you then access here, right? There's but that actually doesn't turn into an access because we're taking the address. So the whole thing currently turns into a context plus a fixed amount. Load in that because it's probably not in cache, and then add something to that and be done. So it's a single load off the context. It would become just a global variable access. And then what would happen is they'd all be in their own data section. So the IDs for them would just be the offset from the base of the section. So that means that the way you would find your ID is by a division. It would cost one division to get an index if you wanted that instead of the pointer to the thing. And that's mostly just for when you want to compress it into a 32-bit integer. Man, that's pretty cool. So that's another iteration I'm going to have to do on top of this, because that assumes one extra thing that I didn't assume in the ID system itself, which is that there is some type which you're going to want a global array of indexed by these IDs. But if you make that extra assumption, then you could push this even farther as a reusable tool by quite a lot, I think. Okay. Okay. So different. Okay. So some things I wanted to do. I want to simplify the duplication on this side, I think, next. So what happens differently with tiles has to do with this line here. They each want a different thing to do. This is also just a different type of process. Okay. This can go to the bottom. That way the others can fold together. Now the only difference between the tile one and the others that's all the same. The difference is just how you initialize from the reg data, right? That's really the only difference. This does all of this, whereas this does this. And like this could just get pushed in a layer, right? I mean, we could push this all the way down to proto init and have it take in a reg data, and then you'd be done, right? You just have it figure it out from there. And if we did that, then the rest of it would collapse into, well, the other big differences are like there's still no way to automate this exactly. You know what I mean? Because like this is the data kind of the registry data. We can parameterize that. But after you've done the computation, you have to bind that registry data to the specific open enum, right? The specific open enum has a glitch in C that has to be fixed by this bias thing. And so that has to be initialized before it can start being used. And so I don't see any way around writing that by hand unless there was an X list. That doesn't make things any better, does it? Okay, so part of why this is confusing is because the ID system is no longer independent. It is depending on the registry system. You see that? The registry system here is how I'm finding these IDs again. So without that, they would just get lost, right? The declarations would happen, but there'd be nobody to create a list of all of them. Now, I could make a standalone solution to just the ID problem in the following way. I could say that whenever you make an ID definition like this, you're not done. That creates the variable, but you've also got to register it somehow. Like to actually create one of these, you have to declare it or define the variable and then go RPG ID reg or something like that. And then you have to provide an ID fix up system. Well, yeah, something like that would need to happen, but not quite that. This registry system is built for the game. It's almost like the ID system needs its own registry system. Because it would want it to work just a little bit different. It doesn't care about kinds at all. The only thing you're registering is a list of pointers for a particular ID. Yeah. Okay, so there's a different way we could approach solving the problem. This is what I should do. Forget the old way of solving it. This isn't good enough. There's a more direct solution. Okay? So what I did here was just a quick trick to get it going, which was I took the list of stuff coming in from the registry and I scanned across all of it and looked at all the raw IDs, and I used the raw IDs that I saw to reconstruct the range of the separate data section, right? So actually what I did here, this min raw ID, max raw ID, these are the addresses of the data section for each one of these sections that we created. The time has come to say I want to write code differently here. I want to say what if code could do something like this? Forget reg data entirely. I mean, forget the whole freaking context. This is primordial, right? This I won't put it before reg map because this and reg map exist at the same level of abstraction. But this is primordial setup stuff now. So we would do RPG tile, right? This right here. We have to do something like it would be something like do I have a range U64 type? I think I do. So I still call it IU64 here. Range F32 exists. Range U64 doesn't exist. Where does range F32 come from? Yeah, I guess I just don't have range U64. That's fine. I think then the way I'll do it is I'll say range U64, range equals, we'll call this the tile range perhaps. Image so that will be my min and max ID. That would set up the ID system. And you know, we could give the count, we could store the count too, right? So this can be a little, like a little blob, like separated from the rest of the world, and then we can just use it later. Okay, so it's like ID count. And so now to set up one of these enums, you set up both of those. And to finish one of them, you would do essentially something that could then be wrapped into RPG ID enum init or something like that, and then you would just go tile, and it would figure out all of this from that, right? Because that's automatable, and as long as you pass that in there, it can figure out that, it can figure out that. That's the way to do it. All right. I know I do this a lot, but it's because I keep drinking tons of water. But I need to take another break, or I could consider being done for the day. I've done 2 long streams today, and it is actually getting pretty late for me. I should probably wind down and sleep so I can actually survive for the rest of the week. This is Wednesday. It was a good day to really dig in and get a lot done. And I think I basically succeeded at making a major step forward in solving one of the problems that was really bumming me out with the first pass, which is that before, all the connections between game elements and stuff was handled by string matching. So I would identify something with a particular string name, and then I'd use a string name somewhere else to find that thing. And that was so that I didn't have to figure out how to resolve IDs in another way. Now, usually when you're building a game, you just do that by creating an enum in a header somewhere, and maintaining the enum, and that's usually fine. But I'm just a little bit annoyed with having to do it that way, and it feels like there's an extra degree of flexibility that I'm really going to enjoy from the one that I've got here. Um, just the little bit of time I spent typing with it already, I started to feel the lightning in a bottle feeling. Now there is some complexity to it. It's a bit nasty, so I'm not. I think it's far from done, and it's not even close yet. I still have to actually go and implement this, which means tomorrow I'm gonna do that, and that is so far outside of what the RPG simulator is usually about. We're now reaching back into the object file intelligence system. We're gonna go just sophisticated enough to implement a way to get to get uh, 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 an address range out of the image of our executable. So once we can do that, then we can pretty much finish the Magic ID system with as much automation as possible. We'll be able to get rid of everything but these two things still need to be done manually. But all of this code, the code that'll still be around, we'll still have to process reg data, but that will all fall into a single path as well. So we'll be able to just list out the things that have IDs, list out the reg data we need to process. Of course, the brain scripts down here are a little different. They just get to be exempted from the whole compression because they're totally different. That'll remain, but a lot of this is going to simplify away back to just a few lines of initialization for each, I guess, I don't know, like script system ID space thing for each of these open enums. But yeah, that's it for today. I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thanks for coming and hanging out and chatting if you did, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the internet. See you tomorrow if you come around.